Hello, this is Pam Brogdon, and today we are going to talk about reading strategies. As we've talked about before, reading is much more than just reading the words on the page. Good readers are made. They use very specific strategies to get the meaning and integrate the knowledge in a reading selection, so that after they finish a reading selection, especially of informational text, and that is what a textbook is, it's informational text, then they understand what the selection is about, understand the concept, and that's what I want for you to be able to do after this class. So we are going to talk about reading strategies, and I want you to use them. Reading does not come naturally, so we are going to go through all of the steps for you to become a good reader. So what do you do when you're reading a passage? It's just like going to a good movie. You get settled in. The first thing you do after you get your popcorn and your Coke is excuse me, you watch the previews. So you're going to preview what's coming up. Well, that's what you do when you read a selection. You preview the content or the passage. You look at the title, you look at the subtitles, you look at any pictures that are in the passage. Then you flip to the very end of the passage or the chapter, and you look at the questions, the comprehension questions. That way, you know what the author thinks are the most important points of this passage. Read those questions through twice so that you can pick up key words, so that when you're reading the passage and you see one of those key words, you're going to know, wow, that's important. I need to mark that. I need to remember that. So that's what you do when you preview. And again, think about it in terms of going to a movie. The previews are the very first things you do when you're sitting down watching a movie. They show you what's coming up. Well, that's what you do when you read a selection. You find out what's coming up. And by reading the title, the subtitles, the questions at the end, looking at the pictures, that tells you what this selection is about. Then you can relate what you already know about this selection or about the topic of the selection with what you're getting ready to read about or find out about. Every little bit of background knowledge that you bring to a title just helps you understand the selection even more. Let's say the selection's about cars. What do you know about cars? You may be a mechanic. You may know all there is to know about cars. Then again, you may be like me. I know how to turn the key in the ignition, and when I do, hopefully the car will start. And if it does not start, I have to call you, the mechanic. So we are very different in what we know about cars, but we bring that knowledge to this passage. So we relate it to what we already know. We integrate it with the knowledge we already have. So already you are on your way to understanding a little bit about this passage before you read the first word. You've just read the title. So after you do the previews, what do you do when you're in a movie? Well, you watch the movie, and the movie is made up of visual images. You see the characters, you see what's going on. They're all visual images. That's exactly what you do when you read a passage. You develop your own visual images. You take the words in the sentence. You give them meaning by putting a visual image. Now, how do you do that? You picture. You're making the movie of this passage in your mind. It's a running movie. If it says the frightened horse galloped down the street head on into traffic. Horns were blowing, Cars were wrecking, trying to avoid hitting the horse. But when I said that sentence, what was going on in your mind? I hope that you had a vision or a visual image of a frightened horse galloping down the street, not knowing what to do, where to go. His eyes were huge, and cars were blowing their horns, which were frightening him even more. Other cars were trying to get out of his way to keep from hitting him. They were hitting other cars. So it's just a chaotic scene. That's what I imagine. That's what I'm hoping you were imagining. The horse can look anything like you want him to look in your mind when you're attaching visual images to the sentences. You are making this movie. The characters can look anything like you want them to look. So it's a fun way to do it, but always attach visual images in your mind to the sentences. You make your movie as you're reading the script. Think about it that way. Now, as you're watching the movie, whether you realize it or not, you are putting together the pieces of what's going on. You are asking yourself questions. You're trying to figure out, now, why did he do that? Or, I saw him do that earlier. What did that mean? You are asking yourself these questions constantly, and you're answering them. Therefore, you're giving meaning to the movie. You're understanding what's going on in the movie. It's exactly what you do when you read your selection. You are making your movie in your head as you read the sentences. And you're also monitoring your comprehension. You are monitoring how you're understanding what's happening. You're asking yourself questions. Why did he do that? Well, let's see. Now, he did this at the very beginning, and that made no sense to me, but now it does. Oh, I understand. And how is he related to her when they've never met before? And how did they know they were... That's the type of questions you're asking, and a lot of times you don't even realize you're doing it. Your subconscious is doing it to figure it out. Well, that's what you do in reading. You're connecting the dots. You're putting the puzzle together. And it happens automatically. I'm talking about this in different fragments. But this all happens at the same time. You're figuring it out. You're understanding what you read. So you're monitoring your comprehension the whole time you are reading the sentences. So now, after you've monitored your comprehension and your understanding, you've watched the movie, you finished the passage. Wow, that was really good. Now what? Well, when you walk out of a movie and you're with a buddy or a friend, you start talking about the movie. Which part did you like the best? What did you think about the part when the horse was running down the street? Well, did you understand why he did that? What happened? How did he get out of his pasture? And you're asking questions. You're recalling or summarizing some of the things that went on. That's what you do when you read a selection. You recall, you summarize. Okay, let's see if I can tell myself what this story's about. What is this passage about? What are they saying? Can I remember some of the facts? What was so interesting? What did I have a question about? You recall and you summarize. If you can't recall and you don't know what the story was about, guess what? You need to go read it again a little bit more carefully. And we also have a strategy for that. But I wanted to go through with you the main parts of reading strategies, the 4 main parts. And so let's go over them. Can you say them before I do? The first thing you do when you go to a movie is you preview. Then you watch the visual images. When you're reading, you develop your visual images. You develop your movie in your mind. You're comprehending what's going on the entire time. You're asking yourself questions. If something doesn't make sense, then you go back and look again. Make sure it makes sense. Make sure you're understanding it. After you've read it, after you've watched the movie, Then you recall and you summarize. So those are the 4 main steps that you do. You can remember those by going to your movie and pretending like you're in the movie. And what do? You preview, you watch the visual images, you comprehend what's going on, and then you recall or summarize what has gone on. So remember that. And now in your next segment, I'm going to model comprehension monitoring for you. Thank you. Review this sheet. Keep this sheet in front of you until you know it and you don't need to look at it anymore.